It's deciding time. Welcome to the GamesBeat Decides podcast, your weekly source for guys taking video games far too seriously. I'm your host, Jeffrey Grubb. With me is Mike Minotti.
That's me.
Mike, today we're going to be talking about the best 3DS games and the future of the 3DS. I'm going to thank everyone for joining us before I even acknowledge your existence.
That's okay.
GamesBeat.com. Email us at gamespodcast@VentureBeat.com. You can like us on the iTunes 5-star reviews. Subscribe on Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play. And Mike, I am so very sleepy.
I'm tired too. Not as good a reason for you. Jeff is a new father, everybody, so that's exciting.
If you're watching on the video, I'm gonna stare in the camera. I want you to look in the eyes of someone that does not know sleep anymore. And you can hear it in my voice on the podcast. I don't know, Mike. I'm still excited about the Switch. And we were trying to think of a topic, and this one kind of came up because of the Switch. We're wondering if it's going to replace the 3DS. So I heard a lot of people talking. Mike, I hear people talk.
Well, Nintendo's wording on this is interesting because I think a lot of us expected them to, kind of like what they were saying about the DS when it was coming out. Well, the Game Boy Advance, was old, but still had a pretty big, user base, was still selling some games. So when the DS was coming out, they're like, oh, this isn't replacing the Game Boy Advance or the Game Boy line. There will be more Game Boys. Then when the DS was a hit, it's like, oh, yeah, it's totally the replacement. And they're kind of doing a similar thing with the Switch here. Although I almost wonder they're being a little too adamant about it to maybe the Switch's detriment. Like, they haven't actually made very many overtures to their portable market to explain to them why they would want to switch. They really are marketing the Switch first and foremost as a home console.
I can understand why they would do that. That makes sense. And you're right, they haven't done the overtures with showing off games that appeal very much to that mobile crowd, the handheld crowd, like things like Rhythm Heaven, things that I like a lot. They didn't have those kinds of games on the system when they were showing off the Switch a few weeks back. Instead, it was a lot of console games you take on the move, Vita 2 kind of stuff. But I think we'll talk about that a little bit more because I actually want to kind of really get into whether or not the Switch is going to replace the 3DS. We're not going to take a ton of time talking about that, but before, we should probably just talk about the best 3DS games. Maybe establish what the 3DS was and why, and whether or not it needs a replacement beyond the Switch. See if there's even a need for it. So I guess, maybe we could just start by listing some stuff. And I think I wrote it down a bunch. Mike, do you want to kind of pick one and say, one of the best 3DS games?
Man, I'm trying to think what I should pick. Should I just pick the one that I think is the best? Lead into
I don't
it a
know.
little bit. I think I just will. Legend of Zelda: Link Between Worlds.
That's a very good video game.
That was just fantastic, right? And the portable Zelda games have actually always been really good for the most part. But a lot of times they do kind of sometimes feel like, yeah, these ones aren't quite as important or good as the console ones, maybe whatever. But Link Between Worlds, that was just one of the best Zelda games that come out probably ever. I think it's probably a top 5 for me in that whole series.
Let's stop the podcast and go play that game again.
I know. I do need to play that one again soon.
I played it. Fun. I was super sad because the new the 3DS XL had come out at that point. But my wife had bought it for me. I knew she bought it for me, but she wasn't going to give it to me till my birthday, 3 months later. So I had Zelda, and I'm like, should I just wait to play it on the XL so I have the slightly bigger screen? And then I didn't. I played it all the way through. I don't regret it, but I'm like, I have a good reason to kind of play it again. I'll play it on the slightly bigger screen and enjoy it all over again. I never have, but I really want to because that game is just spectacular.
It's super cool. It's just the design is really neat. The whole kind of non-linear aspect. It unlike so many of the modern Zeldas, it starts so quickly.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why some of my least favorite games in that series were actually the 2 DS ones.
Mm-hmm.
And not really because the touchscreen controls or anything. That actually works surprisingly well. It was just they were so slow, especially in the beginning, and sometimes they just weren't kind of fast paced enough. I understand Zelda's about exploration and what have you, but it just felt like those games were crawling along sometimes. The Link Between Worlds, you get going. And just so many cool new ideas. The whole turning into a painting thing was neat. All the renting items, which sounded super.
I hated that idea when I first heard about it, and I was like, "Oh, it totally worked." Yeah.
Yeah, I was really skeptical on that. Also, one of the few games where the whole 3D stuff was pretty well done and cool. It's just interesting how these days, like so many games, like the new Pokemon that came out 3DS barely has any 3D functionality
Right.
whatsoever, and the system's
Just
called the 3DS.
it just
Right?
turns it off. Yeah. Doesn't
Right.
it's not even like an option. It's just you turn it off. You
Right.
can't even use it.
And that's kind of the weird thing about the 3DS and the Wii U is like their big touted features were essentially eventually ignored.
Yeah. I always liked the 3D. I always used it, but
I use it as much as I can usually. It depends on game. Link Between Worlds was one I had it on every
Oh, yeah.
time because it just looks cool.
yeah, you're right. You're right about that game. Definitely, it had the sense of speed where you're just like moving through everything that I really appreciated, and the puzzles were so good in the dungeons. Yeah, some other good games. Maybe I think on the other end of the spectrum, because I think that's like a big Nintendo franchise that they have to put out on their systems to really make it a Nintendo system. I think on the other end there are these smaller games that make the Nintendo handheld platforms good Nintendo handheld platforms. One for me is the Picross 3D Round 2. I think the previous Picross 3D came out on the DS. Maybe it was a long time ago. This one is. It's just as good. It's just like the simple puzzle game. I'm not sure if people are familiar with Picross, where you get like numbers on the side. It's a lot like Sudoku, but instead of filling in like your digits 1 through 9, you are removing blocks in a cube to make an image. And in 3D, it is a 3D cube. It's not just like a 2D grid. It seems like a very simple idea, not something you would necessarily even need a video game for. But Nintendo does a great job of designing it and taking advantages of the way that it is a video game, where you get to see like the actual image, what it looks like, kind of forming as you're building it. There are multiple color schemes to the numbers that have different meanings, things like that. I won't get into like exactly how the game works, but it's very complex and it only works as a video game. And it's just such a good idea for a handheld game. One that I wish like I could get it something like that on like my mobile phone, but mobile developers just never nail these kinds of ideas as well as Nintendo does. So yeah, it's perfect for a handheld.
See, it's interesting because I never really played Picross. In general, when I'm looking at my list, a lot of my games for the 3DS are actually kind of Nintendo tentpole things.
They were still great, like on that system.
And when thinking back to the DS, for example, I think a lot of my games are kind of more weird, sort of slightly more offbeat. Like the original DS seemed like the slightly more offbeat system. Like you had this kind of like interesting, strange things like Ghost Trick and The World Ends with You and Elite Beat Age. Oh, Elite Beat Age was the best game on that system.
That's probably one of the best games of all time. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, but so yeah, so that's what's kind of interesting me when I'm like looking at. It's like another one that I think I'll throw out just right now is Fire Emblem Awakening, which
without a doubt,
God, that was just such a. It was almost kind of like the Ocarina of Time for that series in a way, or there's some sort of maybe better comparison. But there's been Fire Emblem games forever, and even in the U.S. now we've had quite a few of them, and it was always such a kind of a lower tier Nintendo franchise. Like people liked them, I liked them.
Yeah, but it wasn't even like people didn't even like consider it with like F-Zero or
No.
like Metroid, Mario Kart. It was always well below any of those things.
Yeah, then Awakening comes out, and they even said like, "Oh, this one doesn't do well. This is probably going to be it." And that, they really just knocked that one specifically out of the park.
Maybe it was like Final Fantasy VII is the good comparison.
Maybe that is good because it was a thing. Yeah,
yeah.
But
and it had its fans, but there was just this nexus of the 3DS performing really well, that game having a really cool look and feel in like advertising and all the videos Nintendo was doing about it. And people like those strategy games, and there was relationship building and kissing, and people were finally like being like okay with like kissing in video games and stuff like that, and like that's like actually a pretty big part of that game. So it hit a lot of different types of people who enjoy games, and it hit them all very well. And man, that game is also very, very good.
Yeah, it's just the presentation was super fun, just really memorable characters. Even,
right.
I liked Fate, but always kind of felt like a little lesser than Awakening in certain ways. Like some of the features from Awakening were kind of just added into Fate, so I was like, well, this was popular in Awakening. We need to do it again here.
Yeah, I think they're on the sophomore slump a little bit there. Not that it was a huge slump. It was just they were definitely feeling the effects of having a mega popular game.
Like the ambition of Fate was like its whole kind of 3 campaigns thing, which was cool, but overall, Awakening is probably the better experience. It's just like such an impact. I mean, I don't know if you saw because you're kind of busy with the baby and everything, but they had their Fire Emblem Nintendo Direct, and
I listened to your other podcast about it, and I kind of got caught up, and it's kind of insane. Like from Awakening, it blew up into this huge thing that now Nintendo is treating like Zelda and Mario than Fire Emblem almost.
Like we haven't had a real Metroid game. We had that one DS one,
Right.
whatever. We haven't had a real Metroid game in forever. We're gonna get like 4 Fire Emblem games this year, and one of them's on mobile. Like they did
Yeah.
mobile, they went the Experiment, Mario, and now Fire Emblem.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But they figured out like how mobile's going to work with their Mitomo social thing, which is whatever. But then Mario came out and they rushed that out because they wanted to get some money. But then it's like, yeah, Fire Emblem is like their go-to, and I can't say actually how frustrating it is to have to be rocking the baby to sleep in one arm and holding my phone and not have Fire Emblem, knowing it's coming out in like a couple of weeks. Like it's like
It's gonna be good.
it's like 2 weeks. I'm like, why can't I just have it right now? I'm like so bored. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. I liked Fire Emblem, but I didn't like it as much as Advance Wars. I would have much preferred a million more Advance Wars to
Yeah, I've
Fire
always been
Emblem.
more of a Fire Emblem guy.
But Awakening finally won me over to be like, okay, I am totally okay with the Fire Emblem games now, and I can understand how this game has blown up, and now there probably won't be a lot more Advance Wars games, and I'm okay with that because Awakening was so good.
Right. And
I think
I
it
am
works
sorry
really
that
well.
and this is actually one of the things that makes me believe that Nintendo is actually putting more development focus on the Switch and it's letting on, especially these teams that used to make 3DS games. Because the next Fire Emblem game is, there's like that Gaiden or whatever coming out this year pretty soon. But the next
That's a remake. I just want to
it's a
double check.
remake.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
it's
haven't
a
watched
remake
the
of
direct yet.
the second one that
Okay.
came out for the NES. So but the next full-on Fire Emblem game is coming out for the Switch, and obviously we don't know, but I'm assuming that is the Awakening Fates team.
Right. Yeah. If it's coming out in 2018, yeah.
Yeah. So that's that's cool.
And I'm glad to hear that. I'm excited about Fire Emblem. And Fire Emblem Awakening is the reason. It's the whole thing that kind of
Oh God, yeah.
brought this all together. Let's see. I guess back to me to pick one. Let's just go back to that same kind of game. I mentioned it earlier. Rhythm Heaven Fever. So Rhythm Heaven games have always been really good. They're from the WarioWare team. WarioWare is one of my favorite
Pretty
franchises.
similar thing.
It's very similar, but instead of just little games, it's little musical games. Bunch of small little rhythm-based music games. And what it does is it brings in all that wacky humor, weird stuff happening. You're playing tennis and you're flicking the screen. That was on the DS, and now it's you're playing with buttons, or you're jumping around with monkeys, and it's all this really wild stuff that's happening. But they kind of perfected the way it works on the 3DS with this Fever game in terms of the games were always too difficult. They were very hard. Even if you were, I think, pretty good at rhythm games, you would come across a couple of these mini Rhythm Heaven games that were too difficult to get past, and people get frustrated. So they found a balance of creating an early campaign that felt like a whole campaign, where it was basically you were playing on like an easy medium mode in between there, and you could amp up that difficulty, and it would still just be like a medium hard, and you wouldn't really realize that you weren't playing the hardest difficulty. And once you got through that campaign and learned all the ins and outs of the way that these rhythm games worked, you would get to this like final boss rush thing, and it worked just by giving you all these same games all over again, but really in their real state and with their real difficulty. Mm-hmm. And by then I was prepared for it, and I was finally enjoying the Rhythm Heaven games to like their full potential. And I'm glad they didn't give up on the series. I'm glad it's on the 3DS.
Yeah, those are always been kind of fun games that I'm definitely glad are around.
Yeah, for sure. You got what else you got? I got a couple more on here.
Yeah, so one that isn't really Nintendo necessarily, but one of my favorite things with portable systems in general is playing JRPGs on them. That's like just a whole genre that it's always difficult for me to play those like as a home console thing now. I just kind of like playing it for an hour or two, like right when I go to bed or kind of wherever. I think the best JRPGs released for the 3DS were the Bravely Default series. And I actually had a hard time picking one or the other because Bravely Default was like the first. Yeah, well, Bravely Default was the first one. It was kind of fresher, but second was probably overall better. It was definitely better paced. I think I forget if you played these games.
No, I always wanted to try Bravely Default, but the demo turned me off, and it turned out the demo was like kind of not like the game at all.
I didn't play that demo really.
Yeah,
so
I think you benefited from that. But yeah, I've always wanted to, and I wasn't sure if like Bravely Second was just more of the same, and so people would be like, oh well, Bravely Default's fresher, like you were saying. But no, Second is an improvement.
Right. Well, Bravely Default is this one problem that people go on about where like. Spoilers, whatever, not small spoilers. There's kind of a time loop at some point it gets introduced. As part of that time loop, you're sort of replaying things a lot. And in order to like get like the best ending or to get all the items and stuff, you kind of have to like redo these boss fights again and again, and they're like slightly different each time, but only slightly. So there's this kind of repetitive section of Bravely Default that goes on for a while and kind of turned a lot of people off. And second doesn't really have anything like that necessarily, which kind of helps it out a bit. But both games are just they have this really interesting battle system where like you kind of like turns themselves are a currency that you can either spend like you can like overspend so that you're going to be like in your character's going to be inactive for a while, or you can like when you defend you store a turn so you get defend for 3 turns, then on your fourth turn like use 2 attacks and 2 magic spells or something like that. So it was, and it also has basically the Final Fantasy V job system, which is like one of my favorite class systems in an RPG, where you're picking class, you can change your class, you like level up your class independently, and you're unlocking new abilities. You can use some of those abilities even when you're using a different class, so you can kind of make these weird combos. So yeah, just kind of tickled just a lot of my JRPG bones, and especially for Square Enix, so they don't do a whole lot of traditional JRPGs anymore. It was just really fun stuff.
Yeah, I think that was the start of like Square Enix being like, we're going to maybe give these traditional RPGs another shot. We're going to try it with this one, work with this developer, see if we can get out there and see if it works out. And it did really well, and now it seems like it might be encouraging them to do a lot more stuff.
Right,
like
and they've done some like things like World of Final Fantasy and stuff like that. So yeah, and Dragon Quest, whatever. You'll have that.
I think I want to mention a couple, and then I'll mention the real one I want to talk about here. So I like Mario Kart 7 and Animal Crossing New Leaf on the 3DS. They're very much continuations of the series as we knew them, and they didn't make a ton of changes. But I feel like they've refined everything about those things that I like to a point where they are great as a handheld game. I can play them a ton. I still love the way they feel. I still love collecting stuff in Animal Crossing. I still love doing an online match in Mario Kart 7. And it kind of almost feels like, where do you go from here in those franchises? And that might be one of the reasons why we're getting like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Right. It's that kind of the weird
Switch.
thing. It's like I'm almost as excited for Mario Kart 8 Deluxe as I would be for Mario Kart 9 at this point. Right?
Yes, yeah,
especially
exactly.
with adding the battle mode, which was like kind of the one sin of Mario Kart 8 anyway. So
and like
sure.
because like the jump from 7 to 8, even though it went from the 3DS to the Wii U, it was really HD graphics and a few other things, but they had like kind of really figured out how to make the power slides work without enabling cheating and stuff like that, where people were like snaking their way to victories. All these other things that bothered me about previous Mario Kart games. They had like fixed all these small little tiny problems, and then they just made it HD, and it's like, well, now it's going to be what? It's going to be portable again, so it's still in HD. So we'll see there. And Animal Crossing, same thing. I hope they're going to have the mobile game. We'll see if that's going to shake things up a ton. They'll probably have a lot of microtransactions there, and we'll see how that works. But
just a few.
Yeah. So, but I think the real one I want to talk about, and this is probably the last one, and I'll see if you have anything else. Mario 3D Land.
That's
really,
I had to.
Yeah, really like this game. It was definitely Nintendo trying to figure out a way to do their 3D games in a way that was as simple as their 2D games. Mario 2D games always sell better than the 3D games.
Yes.
And that's just because more people find them easier to approach. You go up, you know how to play a 2D Mario. Everyone knows how to play a 2D Mario. 3D Mario, you bring in the camera, and people get confused and they get turned away. And Nintendo knows this, and that's why they did things like Galaxy, where they try to figure out like these rotating planets where you can see around them without having to move the camera around a ton. 3D Land just sort of took 3D Mario and put it more on a moving 2D plane. Yeah. It's almost isometric, yeah. And it's
Sonic 3D Blast.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was excited.
Super Mario 3D Blast. Oh, I can't believe I never made that joke before.
I know, yeah. I know. I want that actual game to exist with like those old sprite 3D graphics. I don't know. It was it's a solid Mario platformer. It's really good on the 3DS. The 3D was very good. It's the one game where
the 3D was really good. They would actually have like things that you need the 3D for. Like they would kind of like position these blocks in a way where they almost looked like they're flat. When you turn the 3D on, you could see like the dimensions.
A little gap, yeah. And you could see how it was hovering. And it was like the one game where like if I had the character and I was looking like directly down on top of him and I'd hit the jump button, it was the one where it almost looked like the character was jumping up out of the screen. Most other games, it was like there was a lot of depth. This is the one where it's like it kind of looked like he was jumping out, and I was
Leap
very
Between Worlds
impressed
would
by
do that too, which is
That's
one reason
true.
why I loved it 3D. Especially when you had like
You're
that
right.
one item. I think it was like some sort of propeller where he like literally seemed to
Yeah,
fly out.
and
of,
there was like these like jumping pads too that would do the same thing, and I'm remembering that, and I want to play Zelda again, which I think is the theme today.
Yeah, both of these games like are probably some of the two most replayable. I love
Yeah.
the 3D Mario games probably more so than the 2D ones, and just having that on portable for the first time was just really cool.
Right.
And I think it is smart, especially to if you're doing the portable one, to have that more kind of linear.
Yeah.
I don't want to say simplified, but kind of approach as opposed to the more open stuff you get with like Sunshine and 64. Like it just makes sense.
Yeah, because you're not gonna, you might like
You're playing
lose
a
your
level
place
here and there sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. You just want to like have an endpoint. You want to have something that you can try to find in a small chunk of time, and not be like, okay, what was I doing here? What was I trying to do running around? Not that like Super Mario 64 or Sunshine were these huge sprawling areas, but there was enough stuff going on there where you could be like, sure. I could get a little lost if I was coming back after a certain point of time. So yeah, you're right. That was definitely a smart decision. And maybe that kind of separates like why you would maybe want a portable and a home console as separate stuff. But I don't know. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. Mike, do you have any other 3DS games you really want to touch on?
So I guess just a few more that
please.
I like to talk about. So Smash Bros. On 3DS. I just like Smash Bros. A lot. Right. I thought it was super cool that you had that whole game basically on 3DS.
They pulled it off for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It worked surprisingly well. I even have one friend who we would at tournaments. He would actually use his 3DS as the controller, and he would win sometimes. So yeah. And I was just really impressed with that. I love Smash Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that like I could essentially practice with that in a way. It's like all right, I'm gonna just play this character a bunch. And for traveling, that was like always my go-to because if I had like a minute here or there, I could just play against a level 1 computer for a bit and mess around, and that was just such an easy way to kill time. Kirby Triple Deluxe. There's two 2D Kirby games. I haven't actually beaten Planet Robobot yet, but it seems to be about as good.
You have played it though?
Yeah, I've played it a bit.
Okay.
They're both super good. As far as like the Nintendo 2D platformers action system, I think they're by far my favorite. They're really just kind of clever, cheerful, but they do really interesting things with the 3D, specifically in kind of like almost kind of remember. Did you play the Wario game for the Virtual Boy?
Yes, totally. I totally did. Yes.
It reminds me of that because he's kind of going back and forth between the two planes. Donkey Kong Country would do this too a bit. The returns, the retro ones.
Right.
And there would just be other kind of interesting things, like he'll be holding like this really long rod in the background, and like it would extend to the foreground like 2D plane. Sometimes you have to like jump and like make it like go past certain obstacles and stuff like that. It also like that. It kind of brought back a lot of the Kirby Superstar like when you got an ability, it wasn't just now when you push B you shoot a fire breath. It was like you had a whole move set along with that ability, which kind of just added a little bit more depth to it. So I was just a really big fan of those games. And there's so many Kirby games now. I understand that some people are a little numb to it. But
I wish I would have played them because you always talked highly of them. I think those are the two games I actually think I might regret missing the most on the system. And I might at least pick up Triple Deluxe on the eShop and give it a shot.
Yeah, give it a shot. They're fun. And then real quick, I really like Phoenix Wright. There's two releases for 3DS. The last one was the better one, Spirit of Justice. Just you kind of like those puzzle adventure game things with that. At this point, it's kind of like a chicken soup thing, right? It's just that familiar cast of characters that you like, and you're happy to see them all back and whatnot. So, but yeah, just want to throw that in there.
Did you ever play Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon?
I played. You know what? I played half, and I liked it a lot. I mean, a lot maybe pushing it, but I never beat it. Like there was a point where I was just like, I'm gonna play something else now.
Oh, a lot of people liked it, and I never tried it.
A lot of people liked it a lot, yeah. And I liked it, but I didn't quite love it.
Yeah. There were other like really great 3DS games that were like also multi-platform, but I really enjoyed them on the 3DS, like Shovel Knight. I was
about to say Shovel Knight, yeah.
Yeah, Shovel Knight worked really well. What else? The Steam World Heist. I've been playing that kind of for like the last year, and I still really like it. Let's see what else. Oh, all the 3D Sega Genesis ports. I love Gunstar Heroes and Streets of Rage 2. Like me and my wife actually
Sonic
played.
1 and Sonic 2 are really good in those 3D
Yeah,
things.
exactly. They're like really surprisingly well done. My wife, like I had my old 3DS and I bought it again on that system so that we could play Streets of Rage 2 two-player. With side by side, both in the 3D, and we really had a good time with that. It's cool stuff. But yeah, 3DS, a lot of good games, very good system.
Yes, I agree.
Will it?
It's
Okay,
fun.
so let's flip right into this the next thing. We've touched on it a bunch throughout this discussion, but let's kind of like actually figure this out. Is there going to be more great 3DS games in the future beyond what? Obviously, they're going to release new Pokemon games this year, probably remakes of something, in time for this holiday on the 3DS, because they will always do that. With their older systems until it's like well past the point of penetration for something like the Switch. But I just don't know, Mike. I always thought it was going to be the Switch replacing both systems.
Right, but then that kind of the presentation almost made you think a little bit, maybe not, but I still don't. I think this year we're getting games, right? Because we already know about things
Right.
like that Fire Emblem, that 2D Pikmin game, and stuff like that.
Right.
But I if this thing does decently well, right? If this thing can sell, I don't know what a good first year would be.
Yeah. I mean,
15, 20 million, it would already sell more than the Wii U did. But,
right.
at what point did you say, hey, why the heck not? Like, instead of making, Pokemon Star or whatever, like the next thing is at their Sun and Moon, like, why not just release like a slightly better version of that game for the Switch? Like, is it, it doesn't have to look like a Xbox One game or a console game, as what I'm saying. It could still kind of look like that, look just a little bit better, and say, hey, look, you could play it on the Switch now. And I think that
Right.
would just do such wonders for that system, right?
Yeah, and it's not just that it would do wonders; it would make a lot of sense. Like, okay. So the big reason that people think that they think the Switch won't be a handheld, or at least a decent handheld, is the battery life, and that just makes no sense to me. I think people
The battery life's not that much worse than the 3DS.
right. They heard the
right
numbers
now.
and they just didn't do any research. Like Nintendo said 2.5 to 6 hours, and it is on the low end. It is lower than most other systems. But like I think we talked about this a little bit. Like the 3DS, new 3DS was like 3 hours to 7 hours. But what like the original 3DS was 3 to 5 hours. So like on the high end, it wasn't going as long as the Switch. And the Vita itself, like Vita, their handheld that's very similar in concept to the Switch, also was like 3 to 5 hours. It was just these are all systems that have that kind of range, and I just think people are expecting it to be like a tablet and kind of last all day. But no tablet will last all day when you're playing a game with the screen on nonstop.
The bigger issue for me is like the actual portability, right? Like it's not going to be as easy to take with you to places as a 3DS. Like that classic clamshell design that they've had since the Game Boy Advance SP has always been so nice for
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Like it's this, this thing's not going to be able to easily fit into a pocket or whatnot. You're going to have to get like some sort of a case for it. You're going to have to maybe put it in like a bag or of some kind, right? So that, and is that even that much of an issue now that, some people are used to taking tablets with them everywhere and stuff
Right.
like that? Maybe
I mean,
not.
your phone goes in your pocket, and it's going to rub up against your keys, like because there's no cover for your phone unless you go out and buy one. I'm sure you'll be able to buy one for the Switch. So I think you're right. The mental gap has already been crossed there by most people, where they know like the system's probably going to survive. It's going to be built well enough. I can throw it in a bag and pull it out anywhere. Maybe it won't fit in my pocket, but it probably will fit in my pocket.
You have big pockets.
I have Mike. My pockets are pretty big.
They're just huge.
Okay, but here's the thing. I'm trying to imagine what in the hell a new Nintendo handheld existing in unison with the Switch would even look like. Like we were just
so strange.
It would be so strange. We were talking about Mario Kart. What the fuck, Mario? Like there's no Nintendo system without a Mario Kart. It just won't happen. There's no Nintendo would not
What
make a
does the
system
next portable Mario Kart look
Right.
like? It would
Compared
just,
to
it would just
Mario
get
Kart 8
so
Deluxe.
close to the Switch already anyways at that
Right.
point. It would
Why
be
not-
distracting.
Yeah, exactly. And it'd be like, wait, so can I play this on my Switch or not? Like it looks exactly the same, or they're
No.
really cool. And wait, so does it not work? What is the point? Why wouldn't you just make a Switch SP or a Switch Lite that is slightly maybe smaller, maybe more built to just be a handheld, and release that in 2018, 2019? That makes way more sense to me.
Yeah, I think there's two things that could happen. I think either the 3DS just has an extended lifespan, and I think this is even less likely, right? Like where they just keep releasing games for that for a few more years still,
Right.
or It's just all gets moved to the Switch. I have a hard time seeing like the 3DS 2.
Yeah, for real. And that's a
thing. It's bizarre.
And I see people saying that all the time, and it's just really hard. It's like, have you just not thought it through? Like what happens in a world where the games look exactly alike, but one's the handheld and one's the handheld and a home console.
And I think that's why the Switch kind of happened when it did, because we are kind of at this cross section where they're getting so close anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, a lot of you have like something like Xenoblade Chronicles on the 3DS. That was a Wii game a little bit ago, right? I mean, just it's so much. Even look at the Vita, like so much of that stuff. I mean, Gravity Rush was on the Vita at first. Now it's on PlayStation 4. And sure, it looks better, but it was a Vita game. Same thing with Tearaway, right? We're getting to that point now where we're porting the portable games to like the home console
because they look so good. We want to play them on our big TVs.
Yeah. So.
And
I think it's sad in a way. Like I kind of get that. Like I've always been a big fan of portable game like that, and it definitely won't be the same when it's kind of just one system doing both of them.
Right, but Nintendo could. There's ways to still make it feel more like a handheld system than it could. But I interrupted you.
I do like. No, I do. Well, I do like your idea that like at some point there could be a Switch that is more kind of portable first. Like you could still maybe dock it.
Like
Well, longer battery life. Maybe it's actually a little smaller. Or something like that. Maybe it has a clamshell somehow.
Yeah, exactly. I would love that actually.
Right. But oh my god, yeah. But yeah, there's like things it can do.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing they can do is those games like Rhythm Heaven and Picross, those ones that have always been on the handheld, make sense on the handheld, and belong on the handheld. At E3, come out and be like, okay, and now here is how this system is also handheld. You've already bought it as the home console. We've been shipping it as the home console. That's what we've been telling you. Now here are all those teams that we also folded into one group that are working on games like Pushmo and Crashmo, things like that. Yeah. Those ones that are going to be maybe eShop first rather than retail releases. If they come up with that stuff, they can make this still feel very much like a handheld console. And that's really the only thing that kind of held it back, I think, at this point. The battery life, that was people were just confused there. I don't think they quite understood.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great battery life, but it's not like...
No way.
An end-all. And I was one of them because I heard that. It's like, oh, that's really short. And then I actually looked up the 3DS battery life for a story. I'm like, oh, that's actually not very different.
Yeah, and I just remember like playing Pokemon Go this summer. Like if you were playing that, how long did your phone last?
Right.
Like 2-3 hours. Like people were plugging in batteries for a reason. Anything where you're playing games nonstop on a system with a screen that's constantly on, blaring light at you, it's not going to last that long. So it sounds right in line with everything else. So yeah, I think based on that presentation, the only thing that was really holding it back was maybe the way Nintendo was presenting it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, but I can't imagine a 3DS too. No way, no.
So do we want to name what the best 3DS game was?
Yeah, let's do that.
Do you give me any opposition to Link Between Worlds?
I cannot. Like that is seriously.
It was so good.
I need to maybe do some reckoning and kind of go back and look at my favorite games of all time and see where Link Between Worlds lands, because I think it could be as high as 2, and maybe it's like I really love that game a ton.
Well, what's your second? I'm curious, because my second's probably Fire Emblem Awakening. Actually, pretty easily Fire Emblem Awakening.
Oh, you mean on 3DS?
Yeah, not Zelda, just 3DS.
Yeah, I think it probably would be Fire Emblem. Let me see. Let me look around.
Aren't we agreeable then?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I like Picross 3D Round 2 a lot, but I'm not going to argue. Fire Emblem. I'm playing that a ton right now. That game is so good.
Check it out, maybe.
Yeah, you should. It's definitely worth it. I also want to play that Pocket Derby, that horse racing solitaire game. People talk about that a lot. I haven't tried that. I was going to buy it, but then my wife went into labor. So.
Yeah,
All right, Mike. So Link Between Worlds is the best 3DS game. Number 2 is Fire. I mean, you just want to do the top 5? Let's just do the top 5. Let's get it out.
All right, cool. Let's do it.
Because
Zelda.
Right. Yeah, I'm just gonna. Yeah, okay. So one Zelda. I'll bring up the thing here on the right, and then we'll finish it up. So, what are some other things you would throw in there?
Well, 3D Land should be in the top 5, probably.
I think so too.
And you seem to really like Picross, so you can put that there, and maybe and maybe you can put Smash Bros. In for me. That's my other pick.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Like I said, I love Mario Kart and New Leaf, but those games very much continuations of things I loved about them in previously.
Yeah, I like Bravely Default. I like Kirby a lot, but I
Right.
like Smash Bros. More.
So then...
The typing.
Yeah, I know.
List making.
I just got a quieter mechanical keyboard, and I haven't hooked it up yet because I'm lazy.
I have a very loud mechanical keyboard. I've got like the freaking Razer thing, and it's like
Which Razer one? The Ornata?
no, I think it's like the Chrome or whatever.
Well, they're all Chroma.
Well, shit,
Is it-
I don't know. I mean, heck, I don't know.
Is it Ornata or Black Widow?
What? It's green. It glows green.
Okay, that's probably Ornata because it sounds about as clicky as mine, and mine's the Ornata.
It's pretty clicky, yeah.
Yeah, that's like this. I love it. I love it.
I
so
actually
much.
like the clickiness for
Me too.
myself, but like
Yeah.
it's very annoying when you're talking. And
Exactly. Yeah. Now we're just making a ton of noise. Okay. Mike,
Yo.
number 5 best 3DS game, Smash Bros. 4, Picross 3D Round 2. Number 3, Super Mario 3D Land. Number 2, Fire Emblem, and number 1, A Link Between Worlds.
I like it.
Me too. We should just put a post about that. All right. Cool.
I like
Everyone, thank you for listening. We're done with this. I'm gonna go either change my baby's diaper or take a nap.
I'm
Mike,
taking a nap. I'm tired. My
Yeah.
dog's been throwing up all night. Ugh.
what the hell's wrong with your dog?
Oh, she gets sick sometimes.
Okay, and you just get fat, keep her chocolate, I guess. All right, Mike, tell everyone where they can find you on the internet.
Well, I'm also on the Exploding Barrel podcast with my brother. We talk about games and other things. That's at evpodcast.com. I'm writing for GamesBeat all the time, so go to gamesbeat.com, check out what I'm writing about. And you can follow me on Twitter at Tolkoto, Tolkoto.
And I am, let's see, okay, so I'm looking at the Google Doc rundown of our podcast to find out where I'm on the internet. And I see you've made some edits here, Mike. I am Jeff Grubb, Poop Butt, Fart McFarties, P-Man, CGI Face, Bad Dad, Odyssey to Buttland on Twitter.
That's a ridiculous name, Jeff.
It's pretty good, but I am on an Odyssey to Buttland almost throughout my entire life. So, yeah. Mike, I can't stop thinking about New Dog City. I cannot stop
I love that
about New
idea
Dog-
so much. That's so
I
cool.
love it. I cannot wait. to-
Anybody who is like kind of poo-poo on Super Mario Odyssey, I do not get it. That is crazy talk to me.
Yeah, they're nuts, and I do not like them as people because that game.
It's just
if you
bad.
if you don't look at that game and be like, this is the most bizarre shit ever,
like-
and it's awesome. Like I don't know what to tell you. Oh man,
It's like
New
some
Dog City.
alternate fact stuff right there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
getting topical.
Woo! Oh, he's so political, guys. All right.
That's me.
I also make YouTube videos every once in a while. YouTube.com/Jeffrey Grubb. I'm not going to do that for a while because I'm tired. We'll be back next week. Everybody, thanks for
Yay.
listening. I'm going to wave goodbye now to the video, and then I'm going to say that I waved goodbye on the podcast. I'm waving goodbye.
Furiously.